I want to welcome all the viewership of Piscataway PCTV for January 2022 show. And to start off the new year, we do have our state senator, Robert Smith, who just stopped by. But before we talk about the upcoming year, 2022, I'd like to step back a moment and talk about some of the things that went on in the state government in 2021. Because it was a very active year for state government on all levels, and also the county and local municipalities. But I think what we'll do is turn the mic over to Senator Smith, and he could talk about some of the accomplishments that happened in 2021. And we still have the lame duck session that's still out there for another week and a half or whatever and change.
Right.
And then you have what moving forward in 2022. So, Senator, why don't you take it away and speak about what transpired in 2021?
Mayor, I don't know if that was a good idea to give me an open mic, but we did have a busy term. The term is 2021, a two-year term. And that's true for the first term of a new decade under our Constitution. So the next term in the election of 2023 is a four-year term for the Senate. But in this two-year term, I was amazed at how much we were able to get done. So, and we've done cosmic kind of things, like we found significant resources for the New Jersey, the New Brunswick Entertainment Center. We found some really good resources for a new train station in North Brunswick. And of course, you are voracious in getting money for fixing roads and sidewalks and sewers. But in terms of some of the environmental things, and the reason I talk about those is that I chaired the Senate Energy and Environment Committee, and those are many of the issues that are at the forefront of New Jersey's problems today. We have received reports from the DEP and from scientists all over the world that we're going to be the subject of global climate change, and our state is really at risk. So a lot of the stuff that I would tell you are in the categories of accomplishments relate to that. So some of the things we already have done: food waste recycling. Now, most people don't know it, but Americans waste about half of the food that they have on their plates. And the problem with food waste is it goes into landfills and becomes methane gas. Methane gas has 21 times the impact of carbon dioxide on global climate change. So we've now have legislation that is beginning to set up large food waste processing plants. And if you're a facility that generates more than 52 tons of food waste a year, it's got to be taken there and processed, and not allowing methane to go into the atmosphere. Actually, you use an anaerobic digester. You do make methane, but you use it for heat and electricity.
Now, I have a quick question on that.
Sure.
For the general public, in lay terms. Now, hypothetically, is that like an individual business if they're over that, or if it's like a large company, like say a McDonald's, which has several different chains, which produces a lot of,
It can be both.
Can be both.
You can cover chains or large facilities. Generally with the chains, though, it requires more of a voluntary effort. And we think the larger corporations are going to want to participate in that. First of all, just throwing garbage into a landfill is a very expensive business.
Well, the ironic for those people out there, one of the things, believe it or not, since cooking oil is recycled, periodically, not just in Piscataway, but throughout the state, there's a lot of times there's theft of cooking oil.
Yeah.
Outside of businesses, because there's money to be made in recycling that. So.
Right, and may there be more money available.
Yeah.
So this year, as a result of legislation passed 2 years ago at the beginning of the term, namely the single plastic bag ban, we're now going to be bringing in our reusable bags to the market and putting our groceries in that and taking them home. It's going to take a tremendous amount of plastic out of the environment, tremendous amount of litter, you name it, and that's going to go into effect in May of 2022. We are now requiring, and this is going to affect the mayor, as it is every mayor in New Jersey, we're requiring climate change planning at the local level. We're required in New Jersey every 10 years to update our municipal master plan, what uses of property should occur around the town, where should our roads be, where should our infrastructure be, open space, et cetera. So now, municipalities, when they update their master plans, they're going to put in climate change-related hazard vulnerability assessments. You need to know where we're going to have problems with climate change. Obviously, if you're a shore town, you really want to know what properties are going to be flooded under the best guess projections, but that's also true. Think about some of the storms we've had. You know, water and flooding in New Jersey is a huge problem, and you need to know where properties are vulnerable to that. So you're going to see much more of those assessments in the future.
And as a side note, you think of like with Hurricane Ida that happened in August, you look at, you know, like along the Raritan River corridor in Piscataway with the homes along there and the apartment complexes.
Right,
things like that.
you had some horrible storms where you even had to evacuate people to safer locations. And everything I've seen, I thought the town did a heroic effort to do that. And I think you were actually praised by, was it Governor Murphy?
Governor Murphy came in and said hello to the first responders and the residents there.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the problem being next to a river.
Yep.
Right? But you don't even have to be next to a river to have problems, which is why we need to assess them and make the public aware of them. We already have signed into law grid-scale solar, and what that is to encourage large solar developments so we have enough renewable energy for all the uses we're going to need. If we're going to ever take control of global climate change, the biggest source of global climate changing gas is your automobile. You know, we always like to think of industry or some other villain that is the source of all the contamination and pollutants. Carbon dioxide coming out of your car after burning a fossil fuel is enormous. You know, you can be talking about 20 to 30 tons of carbon dioxide from your individual activities. So we have to get to EVs, all right, and maybe even hydrogen cell cars, but we have to get to EVs, and when we do that, we're going to be taking a big load of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere on a daily basis. So we need to do more grid-scale solar.
And part of that, Senator, I do know before it was a bill, I believe, sponsored by you and signed into law by Governor Murphy, that we had in our master plan required that if there was a addition built on corporate property, that they had to add an X amount of charging stations per square foot.
And that, by the way, is your ordinance in Piscataway as well. You were actually ahead of the state law in requiring charging stations at new industrial facilities.
And it is, I have noticed that it is building out a small network here in Piscataway with charging stations, not just for the workforce development, people that come into town and work, or people that live in town and work at a lot of these companies. It's helping to build out, and it's tied in sort of like with what President Biden wants to do and build X amount of charging stations throughout the country. And the only way you get that, you have to start someplace.
Absolutely.
But I do, if anybody ever drives by at any hour of the day over at the community center when it's open, they'll notice that, with the 6 charging stations here, at least half of them or all of them are always filled up with cars charging up.
And I want to see them all filled up.
Yeah.
And you do too.
Yeah.
And everybody does out there. We really have to get the global climate change under control. We passed dual use solar. And what that means is that farmers can now farm electrons just as much as they can farm crops or cattle or whatever, because this allows the solar use on farms so that you can actually farm under the solar panels. They're built a little bit higher, so you can do cattle, sheep, berries, strawberries, hay, whatever you want to do. But the good news is it's now allowable in New Jersey, and we actually have, with this legislation, a grant to Rutgers to do research to find out the best techniques to do dual-use solar. How do you have a solar use and a farm use work together? And their comments are that it's different in North Jersey than it is in South Jersey, so this research is essential. Then we made it easier for people to renovate their properties to put in charging stations. And the way we did it was to change the zoning rules. You know, in every town, charging stations are a permitted use, so there's no zoning board issue. And they're to get expedited treatment so that they don't have to go through a planning board. They have to go through a zoning permit. Zoning officer is going to make sure it's safe, and at that point, they're ready to go. So trying to make those charging stations easier to do so that we can get to that EV future. Now, that's just some of the things we already have signed. Lame duck, and it's a funny phrase. It's called lame duck because the election is over, and the theory is that you have legislators walking around like lame ducks on crutches because they're on their way out of office. But it's not really all that true. In New Jersey, I think there were only about 10 to 12 seats that turned over out of 120 members of the legislature. So there's not a lot of lame ducks, but there's a lot of important legislation. The last Senate session and Assembly session for this term is January the 10th. And there's going to be long bill lists and a lot of action and interaction between the two houses. So we had 4 lame duck priorities. One was energy and water efficiency, and the great news is it's done. We already got it done in one of the lame duck sessions, and what it's going to do is change appliance standards so that all of us are going to save on our electric bill, but at the same time we're going to consume less electricity. Back into that global climate change theme. We have 3 more bills we want to get done on the 10th, and it's going to be the Wild West, but I think we're going to get them done. The first is neonics. Neonics are a class of pesticides that are particularly toxic to bees. And we have had colony collapse in New Jersey, and that's horrible for New Jersey, and horrible for agriculture, and horrible for what's on your kitchen table. So the neonic legislation will dramatically decrease the use of neonics in New Jersey. It will be the strongest pesticide bill in the country, and we now have it in a good spot. It's passed the Senate. The Assembly did one last amendment, and if they pass it on the 10th, goes to the Senate, we conform the 2 bills, and it's done. And it really is doing the right thing, not just by the bees, but by all of us. We need the pollinators.
Yeah, and I want to jump into that
Sure.
very quickly, being a former 4-H'er. You know, that is critical. The bees are critical because even if you just have your home garden, that's what pollinates your vegetable gardens for your home use. And this is really not about large-scale beehives with people producing honey. It's really about just the everyday. More people have growing their own food than it is on the agricultural end.
Absolutely. And this is like, it really is a no-brainer. You want your gardens, you want your Jersey tomatoes. Farmers want the same thing. We've got to keep our bees healthy. Next is a bill that would take the Governor Murphy's Energy Master Plan goals and make them statutory goals. And you're saying there, why? And the answer to that is that every governor comes in and they can do their own energy master plan. The problem with that is not every governor is as green as Governor Murphy. So he put together a very green energy master plan, very terrific on the energy side. And this would now make the goals in the master plan statutory goals, which means every time a commissioner, the head of a Department of State government, makes a plan to do something, they've got to do it in the context of those goals, because that's the statutory direction. And we don't want to see any backsliding in future administrations.
See, and I guess in the past what you're saying is, Senator, is when administrations change over, that can bounce back and forth or be dropped, or, you know, but now you're saying it would be in there statutorily.
Right, well, absolutely. So, for example, and don't anybody get too mad at me for reciting history, when Governor Christie became the governor, all of the energy goals flipped in a totally different direction. One example was that he pulled the plug on the regional greenhouse gas initiative, which we think is essential to help us and the states around us.
In the Northeast.
In the entire Northeast to work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So let's put it in as a statutory goal, and then that kind of thing can't happen. So that's January 10th again. And then finally, and this is a big one, it's recycled content. Everybody in New Jersey thinks we're doing a great job with recycling. The answer is no, we're not. And the reason we're not is because, one of the reasons is that China, approximately 3 years ago, said, we don't want any more of your crapola. And as a result, you see our, quote, recyclables being sent to landfills, although the truth is we shouldn't have been sending it to China either. We should have been taking care of it responsibly. So the point of recycled content is to require that in the bottles, the cans, the paper that you buy, there's a certain percentage of recycled content. And what that does is to make markets for it, so that there's now a market for the recyclables that your municipality or your county is collecting. One of the things in the municipal budget and county budget that's been going up is, quote, recycling.
Oh, yes.
Because it's not recycling anymore. It's taking it to a landfill and dumping it.
Yeah, just ours is more than $500,000 that went up from municipality Piscataway. So
Well,
just multiply that by all the other towns in the state.
567 municipalities. It's a big nut.
Yeah.
So this is not only good for the environment, it's good for your pocketbook. We want to have recycling markets. This will require the manufacturers to put in a certain percentage of post-consumer recycled content in their products. So it's good stuff. And those three bills, neonics, recycled content, and the Energy Master Plan goals are the three bills I personally want to see passed on January the 10th. I think we're in a good spot, but it's the lame duck. What we say in the lame duck is protect your bank accounts and your property. The legislature's in session for lame duck. I'm hoping there's not going to be any problems. I think we have the legislature convinced all of these things are the right thing to do. So I know the mayor is going to say, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for me next year or this year? Because we're now into 2022 and 2023. And I think, Mayor, it's time that we get very, very serious about the global climate change problem. Every day you're seeing more evidence of it. 2 years ago, you had half of this country burning down from the west all the way into the Midwest. And you're continuing to see these crazy weather events like Ida that dropped 9 inches of rain on New Jersey. And never, I don't think anybody in currently living could remember a storm like that. New Jersey doesn't get 9 inches of rain. And the flooding and the property damage, horrible. You look at both ocean water rise. You see what's happening on the polar ice caps, Greenland. We're in a serious problem. So what is the really big, serious step that we need to take? And the answer to that is we need to amend our state constitution to say no more fossil fuels. And what I mean by that is the generation of electricity. Usually power plants in this state have a lifetime of 20 years. At the end of 20 years, what happens? A new plant is built. And right now, the law says it can be any kind of a plant you want. So we pretty much gotten rid of our coal plants and our oil plants, but we do have natural gas plants. And what we would like to see, if we amended the Constitution, it's designed to not give you rate shock, where you get an electric bill and you say, oh my God, where did this come from? What it says is that when your electricity generator is at the end of its useful life, it doesn't get replaced with another fossil fuel plant. It has to be replaced with a renewable energy source. And on the other side of the equation, we're making solar very, very available, stimulating it. And the other thing we're doing, which is tremendous, is wind power. We now have contracts for 7,800 megawatts of electricity to be generated by wind energy off the coast of New Jersey. So this is not a proposal that is crazy. It just says, as you replace these plants, got to be replaced with renewable energy. And that, by the way, is the second largest source. The first largest source is cars and trucks. Second largest source is electric generation. And think about this. When you change the electric generation to renewable, and that's now going through the wires to your car, now the car is not generating carbon dioxide, nor is the generator of the electricity generating carbon dioxide. And now we start to actually get a handle on the emissions that are causing global climate change. There is also a divestiture bill. You know, New Jersey has billions of dollars in pension funds. A lot of that money is invested in Exxon and Chevron and a number of other oil companies. And that bill, if passed, would say divest. And you may remember years ago when we were talking about South Africa and apartheid, and probably a good topic to bring up. We're close to Martin Luther King Day. The world made a decision, or many countries in the world made a decision that symbolically they had to tell South Africa that apartheid was a system that was totally unacceptable. You need to do that with fossil fuels. We've got to send that signal to the fossil fuel companies that they need to be redirecting their investments into renewable energy and get out of the fossil fuel business. Because fossil fuels and cars as they currently exist are killing us. They literally are killing us. One of the resistances I get to this, Mayor, is that somebody said, well, it's anti-business. And my answer to that is not anti-business. Your insurance companies, your banks, everybody that has any interest in property, you should be scared silly because of the change in the global climate.
It's the liability issue. And ironically, if you think with FEMA now, the FEMA maps have now changed. Instead of having to be dealt with water, it's risk assessment now. Throughout it's like what could potentially happen, not where like the 500-year floodplain is or the 100-year floodplain. It's now what's risk averse. So, which is I think is very interesting. So, but one of the things that it will create jobs like the wind farm. I know South Jersey, I guess Paulensboro or whatever, they were going to have a manufacturing site there, I believe, and then the transmission and generation of electric. So
there's going to be a huge number of new jobs available for people, and hopefully, as we go through this process, because the funny thing is, the IBEW it has been renamed now to the International Brotherhood of Environmental Warriors. And when I say that to them, they laugh, but the truth of the matter is all this solar, all this wind, all of the new renewables are unbelievably good for them. The flip side of that, though, is there are going to be some labor groups that are not going to be well off, like, for example, the pipeliners, because you're trying to get out of the oil and natural gas business. So you need a way to have a transition so that people can learn new skills and be successful.
What a lot of people don't realize is that we do receive a lot of our natural gas from Texas coming through the pipeline. As a matter of fact, I have the Duke Energy lines that runs right in front of my house. All those lines were all installed in the 50s. And at some point, they're going to have to remediate or whatever those lines going from Texas all the way up to the tri-state region. And that's going to be very costly for the private sector to do that.
Yeah, and that's why that the constitutional amendment, right way to go, because you're evolutionary rather than revolutionary. If somebody comes up and says, turn the switch off today, that's a problem, all right? On the other hand, global climate change is moving so quickly that we really have to do serious stuff, and we really have to get it done as quickly as possible. So I'm hopeful that this term is the term where I can get that amendment to the Constitution on the agenda. I think if it gets on a legislative agenda, I think it passes overwhelmingly. But it's very hard to. There are a lot of interests opposed to it.
Now, the state, I know with the Board of Public Utilities, there hasn't obviously been any nuclear power plants being built nationally, I think, in 25 years, 30 years?
Are you talking nuclear now?
Nuclear.
Yep.
So,
by the way, that may have to change too. And I'm not trying to drive any of your listeners crazy, but New Jersey, 2.5, 3 years ago, decided that they had to provide extra support for the 3 nuclear power plants that we have in New Jersey. And the reason being when you have any other kind other than renewables, you're getting all kinds of terrible things in the air that affects people's health, and you are also doing more global climate change, which we really can't handle. We're really on a tipping point in terms of the long-term impact to the planet. So nukes may be coming back. Maybe not big nukes, they might be small
but maybe
nukes.
smaller ones right there.
Right, but I think they may be coming back.
So the combination of solar, wind farms, nuclear, and whatever else is developed technology-wise. But I think it's just amazing over the last 10 years how technology has advanced far enough that where it really has jumped energy efficiencies a lot quicker than what was anticipated.
Right, and by the way, that's the best thing you can do for the environment, which is save the consumption of electricity. That's the low-hanging fruit, energy efficiency. But we have to do all the other things, and we really can't wait any longer. We're kind of on the edge.
Well, if anybody who owns a home in a potential hazard area knows that something has to give, because I guess the insurance rates that people are having to insure their property have gone skyrocketed. Not just here in New Jersey, but just up and down the eastern seaboard and other parts of the country, interior sections of the country too. So it's like, be careful where you built, go to buy a house now, because you have to.
That's why we're asking the municipalities to outline that in their master plans. People have to know what they're buying into, and what the long-term impact of it is.
Well, I know just there, like we have some very small streams, and over time it does erode property away, and it's private property. Township, local governments can't go in and go on private property to fix things. But people, if you buy a property that has a stream going through it, eventually Mother Nature is going to erode it, just because of sheer volume.
Right.
And that's what people have to worry about.
By the way, another good thing that's happening in lame duck, not sponsored by me, but by a senator nearby, Senator Patrick Dignan, who's from South Plainfield. He has a bill up on the 10th, which will provide for demonstration grant money for school districts to convert their diesel buses to electric. And that's something all school districts should be looking at. It's expensive, but those diesel particulates have had a dramatic impact on children's asthma, and we really need to be reducing those emissions from the school buses. And Pat Dignan came up with a plan to get it started. So I want to give him kudos. I think it's going to pass on the 10th.
And I think he chairs the Senate Education Committee.
Senate Education.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how he gets into it, because that's part of his jurisdiction.
And do you have any other items, or those? That's it.
I have.
It's an
I have
overload.
actually, because we try to do it right the first time. We published for all of the people who are interested in this area the 4 bills we wanted to get done in lame duck, and then we filed 16 new bills, 16 new bills for the new term, but filed them now so people could start thinking about them.
Okay.
We even started to have some hearings, which were not to release the bills. But you're going to see in the first quarter of next year a discussion about a lot of new ideas to try and help us to deal with this new future, which is going to be very challenging.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, since I've been mayor for 20 plus years now, I've seen we're dealing with one catastrophic thing after another. And it's just like, I know when you were mayor at one time, and I know when Ted Light was mayor, it was like if you had something that came along once every 20 years, that was considered long.
Are you trying to say you've had better challenges than we've had? Is that what you're trying to say?
No. But I mean,
I agree with you.
It just seems like it's becoming
tough.
more and more
Really
frequent than it was in the past.
Yeah.
So, well, Senator, if you don't have anything else here, I want to thank you for stopping by and letting our viewership know some of the things that are going on, both you and your colleagues in the state legislature, what happened in the 2020 and 2021 and session, and what your thought process is, what may happen in 2022.
Yeah. And maybe one concluding thought, Mayor, which is we're always open to ideas. If there's anybody in the 17th District, and Piscataway is a big part of the 17th District, we're right here. We have an office in Piscataway, 732-752-0770. Call in, email us, cards and letters. We actually read everything that comes in. And we're looking for good ideas anytime. So please send in your suggestions.
Well, Senator, I want to thank you for stopping by on Piscataway. We look forward to you seeing you again in latter portion
Mayor,
of the
looking
year.
forward to it.
Good. Okay, Pastor, are you ready to assume the oath of office?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Thank you. And repeat after me. I, Linwood Rouse,
I, Linwood Rouse,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established
and to the government established
in the United States
in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of office of Township Councilman at Large
of office of Councilman at Large
for the 2-year unexpired term,
of a 2-year unexpired term,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Well, congratulations, Pastor, on being
Thank you,
sworn
Mayor.
in, and
Yes.
I'm even more impressed you were able to hold the Bible yourself.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, this is United States Senator Cory Booker, and I want to thank you for giving me a few moments to give my warmest gratitude and congratulations to everyone being sworn into office today. You all have been given a sacred trust. You have been entrusted by your neighbors, by community families, by friends. You've been trusted by the people of your community to share a role of leadership that is a reflective not just of your dedication, but reflective of the best of who we are. You see, the ideal of governance in our communities, this is a state in New Jersey that was founded in many ways before the nation was founded. We came together with this ideal that we could make a great state in which the best and the highest ideals of humanity could give life to abundance, to opportunity, to community. That is a tradition that has continued, and it's continued because the leaders like you who are protective of the most fundamental elements of who we are, our communities, our parks, our schools, our religious institutions, our roads, our connective tissue as a society, you all, the local leaders, knowing this as a former city council person and mayor, you all are the ones who are in many ways safeguarding our traditions, nurturing our community, helping us to have a continuance. You all are harboring that which is America, the best of our nation. And so I want to say thank you. This is not an easy time. We are in the midst of a pandemic. We are seeing challenges roll our ways, from epic historic storms to the fiscal challenges of an economy getting back on its feet during difficult times. All of this you are facing and more. I'm sorry I'm not with you physically, but know this: as your senator, I am with you spiritually. And I'm proud that my partner, Bob Menendez, and I have been working to bring back historic levels of resources to our state so that local leaders have more resources with which to do their sacred duty, to do their job, to lead in difficult times. 2022 is not just a new year, it will be a year of new challenges and new opportunities. And I know that as leaders ascending and assuming these responsibilities, you all will help us to seize the opportunities, meet the challenges, and continue our march forward. Thank you so much. May God bless you, may God bless our state, and may God bless this great nation. Thank you.
We were very fortunate enough back in the month of December to have our local congressman stop by at the Piscataway Senior Center and talk about President Biden's Build Back Better. So now we're going to go to the videotape.
We're here today to discuss the historic healthcare provisions that were passed by the House in the Build Back Better Act, and just really celebrate what a great achievement that was and urge the Senate to quickly pass this legislation.
First of all, I want to thank Congressman Pallone, and I'll say a little Washington speak here, Chairman Pallone. If it wasn't for him and several of his colleagues in the state delegation,
arguing and fighting on behalf of seniors across the state of New Jersey. We should be thankful we have an individual such as Congressman Pallone representing this area in the state, but more importantly, in a key position in the House of Representatives to effectuate positive change for seniors across this country of ours. We can build beautiful facilities here for our seniors. We can have great programming, great folks to work with our seniors. But one thing that we can't do, and as much as we would like to do, but is sort of a responsibility of the federal government, and to a certain extent the state governments, is try to put programming at the national level and have a direction on how programs are going to affect seniors in their golden years. It's very interesting that we as local officials here try to make things affordable for here and seniors, but we don't control Medicare, we don't control Medicaid, those are federal programs. And when you have the likes of a Congressman Pallone here that are trying to put new programs and processes in place to make healthcare affordable and more accessible for seniors, that is a great thing, not only for the state of New Jersey, but for our country as a whole, and for the Piscataway Township senior population. Because at some point, we're all going to get older. That's a fact of life. We're all going to get older. And the programs that Congressman Pallone and several of his colleagues are fighting for on your behalf are going to benefit not only the current generation of seniors, but more importantly, future generations. I have to now look at, my children now, what's going to happen with healthcare when they get older, or our potential grandkids. What happens? So I want to thank Congressman Pallone again for stopping by Piscataway. It's considered one of his second homes here in the district, and he's always welcome back here, along with some of his colleagues that potentially stop by.
The one that I think has received the most attention is negotiated prices for prescription drugs. Some of you know that I've been advocating this for years. The idea that every other government in developed countries, whether it's Western Europe, Japan, Australia, they all negotiate prices with the drug companies in an effort to try to bring costs down to their seniors in particular, in our case, in the Medicare program. And we've never been able to do that. When the Medicare Part D was established years ago, there was slipped into it a provision that said that the government couldn't do that the federal government couldn't do that, which I think was wrong. And so for the first time, this bill, which passed the House, and as was mentioned, we're trying to get it passed in the Senate in the next couple of weeks, actually allows for the federal government to negotiate prices. Now, it doesn't allow everything to be negotiated, and certainly not everything right away. There was a major issue because of what we call the exclusivity period. When a drug is on the market and has a patent, the drug companies were opposed to it being negotiated during that patent period. I would have done that, but that's not what's in this. But it certainly allows for negotiations of drugs beyond the patent period, beyond the exclusive period. And I wanted to mention a couple, only because I don't like to just be abstract about this. And so I thought, well, can I mention some drugs that would be covered? One is Revlimid. I can mention that because my father had multiple myeloma, right, which is a very debilitating disease. But Revlimid is that postponed your life. He lived an extra 4 years because he was taking Revlimid. But last time I looked, the cost of that annually was $85,000 to the federal government, right, under Medicare. It's covered, but $85,000. And then there was a copay, which was significant. So that is an example of one that would be negotiated. Another one, which you hear about if you stay up late at night, which I do, is Humira. You see the advertisements for Humira? Okay. Humira, I guess, is mainly for rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's and other diseases, but it's beyond its exclusivity period, and so it would be one of the ones that the Secretary of Health and Human Services could take and negotiate. And then the third one, most important, is insulin. Now, insulin is actually a generic drug. But that will be negotiated. And the bill specifically says you can't be charged more than $35 a month for insulin, which is capped, right? So it's significant. But beyond that, what the bill does is also says that you can't spend more out of pocket. A senior can't spend more out of pocket than $2,000 a year, and that's divided per month. So you divide it by 12 each month. Now that seems, some people say, well, why should they have to pay anything? But there are a lot of seniors that are paying significantly more than $2,000 a year. And then the third thing, I mean, there's more, but I'm just highlighting a few. The third thing is that that there's a rebate if the drug company annually increases their price more than inflation, which is significant because it means that some people say, well, what do I care? It just means there's a rebate to the federal government beyond the inflation rate. But what we think is going to happen is that the drug companies won't want to pay that rebate to the federal government. So that will really reduce prices even more. And that applies to all drugs. It's not just Medicare, right? So it doesn't matter. In other words, it could be private insurance, whatever, that if they're raising their price more than inflation, you get a rebate. They have to rebate the difference to the federal government, which I think is going to significantly reduce prices. So all these things are combined in this drug pricing initiative. And I really wanted to stress that because I think it's probably the most significant aspect of this. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is that seniors, as you know, under Medicare, do not have any kind of hearing benefit, right? Unless they're in Medicare Advantage. If they sign up for Medicare Advantage, which isn't very widespread in New Jersey, it really isn't. It's like in places like Florida, it's more widespread. But unless you enter into a Medicare Advantage program, which limits your doctors and hospitals, you don't have any hearing benefit. This bill provides for a hearing benefit. Not only can you go to audiologists or a doctor to assess your hearing, but also the hearing aid is paid for. So that's also significant. And then the other thing that is really important that I want to stress is the subsidy, if you will, that we give to people that buy their insurance on the marketplace. Most people still get their insurance on the job, or you might get your insurance as a senior through Medicare or low-income Medicaid. But there are a lot of people that fall through the cracks. And so, as you know, we did 12 years ago. You certainly remember, Mayor, because when we announced it, we had a public forum at the municipal building, and we had like 3,000 people show up because all the naysayers that were against it, right? That was Obamacare. I call it the Affordable Care Act, but most people know it as Obamacare because he was the president who championed it. What we did in the American Rescue Plan, which was the first bill that we passed this year that tried to address the COVID crisis, is we significantly increased the subsidy, the level of subsidy, and the number of people that would be eligible for the subsidy. And this bill, the Build Back Better Act, extends that until 2025. And so, for example, in New Jersey, we estimate that 9 out of 10 people that buy their insurance through the marketplace, in other words, they sign up for Obamacare, if you will, 9 out of 10 right now only pay less than $10 or less per month for their premium because of the subsidy. And that now is extended until 2025. So that's also significant. Now, I could mention a couple other things, but I just want to briefly, because again, how much can we talk about today? But they're no less important. We make permanent the CHIP program, the Children's Health Insurance Program. Highly significant. We talked about this over at Children's Hospital at Robert Wood Johnson one day. We also expand, our country has one of the worst maternal mortality rates in the world amongst developed countries. And it's particularly the case with African American women, right? And so what we do is we guarantee postpartum coverage at least a year after the baby's born. And we do a lot of other things to improve the mother's health and well-being before she has children, because we're trying to reduce the maternal mortality rate. And I think that's all. And you also mentioned, I really should mention that the community and based healthcare. I've always been an advocate for trying to prevent people, unless absolutely necessary, to go into a hospital or a nursing home, to keep people at home. So there's a $150 billion price tag in this bill to give essentially money to hire more home health care workers, to pay them higher salaries and provide better benefits. The idea would be to expand home health care. Most people don't know, unless they face it, that if they go to a hospital, Medicare only covers home health care for a month when you come home, right? That's it. And unless you're on Medicaid, which have to be very low income, you don't get any additional coverage. And so this is going to basically try to expand home health care so people don't have to go to nursing homes and then spend down under Medicaid to be able to stay in nursing home. Anybody who's had to deal with this knows exactly what I'm talking about. Many people who are younger don't, so they have no idea, but it's extremely important.
For years, Americans have been sick and tired of paying the highest prices in the world for medications that they need. Here in the Garden State, more than 2 out of 3 New Jersey voters 50 plus are concerned that they will not be able to afford the medicines they need as they age. It's no wonder that older Americans are worried about the cost of their medications. According to an AARP RX Price Watch report, prescription drug prices rose more than twice as fast as inflation in 2020. In fact, prices have risen faster than inflation every year for nearly a decade. And every year, Medicare spends more than $129 billion on prescription drugs. Yet, it is still prohibited from negotiating with drug companies for lower costs. Allowing Medicare to negotiate will save seniors billions and lower prescription drug costs for all Americans. No one should have to choose between affording their medications or paying for food or rent. The Build Better Back bill that the House passed earlier this month is a historic step in helping seniors afford the medications that they need. The bill, and as many people noted, but I feel is really important to reinforce, the bill includes meaningful reforms to bring down medication costs by finally allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, by penalizing drug companies through rebate program if they increase their costs more than inflation, by adding hard out-of-pocket caps to Medicare Part D, and by capping co-payments for insulin. Nationwide, an overwhelming majority of Americans want Congress to pass legislation that would allow Medicare to negotiate prices. And New Jerseyans agree. 88% of 50-plus voters believe that Medicare should be able to negotiate lower drug prices. Now it is time for every lawmaker to keep the promise that they have made to lower drug prices. We applaud the members of Congress who stood up to Big Pharma to reduce prescription drug costs and ensured Medicare negotiation was included in Build Better Back. But the fight is not over. Now we urge the Senate to take up the Build Better Back legislation and move toward a vote quickly. Older Americans have had enough with broken promises of reform. AARP and our nearly 38 million members nationwide, 1 million of which are in New Jersey, will continue to fight for prescription drug reform, including taking on Big Pharma, until the Build Back Better bill is signed into law.
And Build Back Better recognizes, as New Jersey does, that healthy children and healthy families begin with healthy moms by investing in maternal health, expanding postpartum coverage so that mother and child have the care they need when they leave the hospital, making investments to reduce the ridiculous racial disparities that continue to exist in this country today, and improve maternal health outcomes. And Build Back Better is making access to prescription drugs better. It is going to limit and begin to abolish the conversations that happen in far too many households. Should I fill this prescription or should I pay this bill?
I urge our New Jersey senators to stand with Chairman Pallone to support the current drug price reforms and the Build Back Better Act. New Jerseyans like me need you to fight for the thousands of us affected by the unaffordable price of our prescription drugs. So many New Jerseyans are suffering right now. We don't have time to wait. Thank you.
State of New Jersey, being an advanced thinking state, has already initiated some of these reforms, but for most of the country, that's not the case. And the impact on its prescription costs are so enormous that every senior citizen in the state needs to know how important it is, and you need to get on your phone lines and on your in the mailbox. And I don't have a doubt that Senator Menendez or Senator Booker are going to vote right on Build Back Better, but the rest of the country I'm unsure about. And there's at least one or two senators that have some doubts. So what you need to do after this meeting is to think about what relatives you have, what son-in-laws, what sister-in-laws, whatever family you may have around the country, and give them a call and ask them to make sure that their U.S. senators know how important Build Back Better is to your future health care. You got to do it.
I want to thank everybody for watching the January Eye on Piscataway. We're going to close out the show now with a wrap-up clip of the year in review, and we'll see you in February.
About a 48-inch main that evidently let go here under the roadway bed of Possumtown Road. You can see the pressure of the water coming out, and over here on the side, you can see it's actually eroded the roadway bed. Interesting how the confluence of a certain intersection in a community, one community, can really affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of other people in the state of New Jersey. I know this has been a very large inconvenience for everybody, but you know, this is another day in Piscataway. Hey, listen, we're Piscataway strong. We know how to deal with adversity. If you could honestly see how tall the water was up to that sign, the apartment complex sign.
We're going to stay with folks. It's not going to be a short road. I think would be committing a disservice if we gave people the impression this is going to be an easy recovery, because it's not going to be. But we will stay with folks at every step of the way. So thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you.